Today we will talk a little bit about LogRhythm. So some details about LogRhythm to start with. Okay, so the company is based in Boulder, Colorado, but we do also have offices globally over Europe, Africa, Middle East, and also the APAC region. And this is very important because it allows us to serve our customer globally. Okay, we ensure real 24/7 service and support for our customers. The company has been founded since 2003, and this is also a significant number because if you think about the cyber security industry today, a 20 years old company is really something to be reckoned with. Okay, we've been working with our customers, with over our 4,000 global customers, working on data for those customers since 20 years now. And we have been a leader in this business since 9 years. We do enjoy the recognition of Gartner, and we are on the upper right sector of their Magic Quadrant. So a true leader since 20 years and since 9 years, sorry, in the SIEM technology. And so what we do for our customers is that we reduce their cybersecurity exposure, we eliminate blind spots for them, we help them shut down attacks and limit damage and disruption inside their infrastructure. So we do this with our main flagship technology and product, which is our NextGen SIEM Platform. Okay, this is an enterprise-grade SIEM solution, which, as I was saying, has been a leader in this industry for 9 years, which offers a comprehensive protection for threat and significantly reduce time to detect and time to respond. So MTTD and MTTR is 2 metrics that we use, which is mean time to detect and mean time to respond. So a little bit later about this, but those are significant numbers on which we always work with a lot of attention with our clients. And we offer true unlimited data plan on this technology. Recently, we added a second product to our portfolio, which is the MistNet NDR. So this is a next generation network detection and response technology, which uses machine learning and advanced intelligence to build a precise picture of network behavior in order to detect threats inside your networks. So we will probably organize another webinar on this technology specifically in a couple of weeks, because this working with the SIEM technology is an absolutely brilliant solution. Okay, so we just cannot wait to tell you more about this technology also. But next, let's go back to the SIEM, which is our focus today. So what do we do? Basically today, if you are working in cybersecurity, so if you are a vendor or if you are a customer, what happens is that you are exposed to a lot of technology, okay? And this is the nature of the cybersecurity technology, is that there is a lot of technologies on a lot that focus on a lot of different aspects, okay? And every single vendors, if you are a client, is going to tell you that his technology is the most important and that you need to focus on this specific technology. But most of the time, all of them will forget to mention that in order to be efficient, all those technologies need to be linked together. All those technologies need to communicate together, because otherwise you find yourself in the swivel chair problem. We call it the swivel chair because you need the swivel chair to look at all the different screens of all those different solutions. And what we do with our next generation SIEM is that we take all those technologies, all this data which is generated by the different solutions which are deployed in the environment of the client, and we bring it in one solution, one framework which actually communicates with all those technologies, consume data from all those technologies, and also provide some command and some response capabilities. Okay, so you do not only see the data and analyze this data, but you are also capable of launching response directly to those technologies. Okay, out of the box today, we already integrate with 950 different technologies, 950 different vendors, plus some API capabilities and customization capabilities where if you work with a vendor that we do not already integrate, we can just add it specifically for you. So how do we do this? Well, it all starts with data consumption and input. Okay, so the first thing we do, of course, is that we consume data coming from all the log sources, all the other machine data, all the security events, audit logs, application logs, flow data, and system logs that are generated within your infrastructure. Okay, so we do this either by integrating syslog, either by our open collector technology, which allows us to integrate with virtually any information data source inside your infrastructure. What we also do is that we enrich this data. So we add real-time data generation, either by monitoring your network, either with our new NDR technology or with our existing capabilities for full packet capture and application ID. And we also add some endpoint monitoring. And another thing we do is that we add real-time context. Okay, so we are capable of looking at your internal data generation, either from a user point of view, either from an host point of view, and also third-party sources, Spamhaus, for example, any other provider of threat intelligence can be integrated directly inside our data input. Once we have all this data, we provide analytics. Okay, so what we do, the first thing we do when we have all this data and we start providing analytics is normalization. Okay, so we normalize all this data because the problem is that all this data coming inside your system has different formats. The codes are not the same. Even the timestamp is not the same if you are working on multiple time zones. So what we do is that we take all this data and we normalize it. And once we have normalized this data, we use metadata on it. So we add the context of the data. We add the origin point. We add the destination. We add analytics on this destination and on this origin point. We uniform all this data classification, and then we add contextualization from a threat and a risk point of view. And all this activity is what we call our machine data intelligence, MDI for short fabric. Okay, and I will show you in the demo later how this works and how this is hugely beneficial for you compared to other solutions on the market. This is one of the biggest differentiator of the LogRhythm next generation SIEM technology. It's this capability to normalize and create this machine data intelligence fabric. And once we have this normalized data, we add analytics. So of course, we can do behavioral profiling, we do AI and machine learning, we can add deep packet analytic, we can add advanced event correlation because event relationship is also important in order to detect threats to your infrastructure. We can do blacklisting, whitelisting, etc., etc. And we add search analytics, okay? Because this is the core of what we do. We search for data. So we have a lot of ways of doing it. We can provide structured search, we can provide pivot searching, we can add contextual lookup, you name it, okay? So we have a multiple capability and the search of the existing data for you. And once you obtain your results, we provide the output. So we have different kind of outputs. We can provide priority alarms. We can provide real-time dashboards. We have, because as a responsible for the security of an organization, you have two duties, right? The first duty is to protect your organization. And the second one is to report to your board and to maintain compliance with industry standards. And in order to maintain compliance and report to your board, you need to be capable of generating specific reports. So out of the box, we provide hundreds of different report formats, which are already adapted to your exact compliance standards. And of course, we also provide incident tracking and metrics for your daily review. And another thing we add on top of all this is workflow capabilities. You can add case collaboration. So there is a very powerful case manager feature inside the NextGen SIEM. We add an evidence locker, because if you have a fraud case, you need to provide bit-level evidence. So we have a very powerful evidence locker capability. We can provide different kind of response also, either fully automated response, which requires absolutely no action from the user, okay, when a specific alarm is triggered. We can also provide playbook, semi-automated response, you name it. You have the possibility also to create your own response and your own playbooks. And if all this doesn't answer precisely your use case, we also bring expertise on the table, which means that if you have a specific need, we have the LogRhythm lab team, which are permanently working on use cases and on providing new features for our customers. So as soon as you start working with us, you have an access to the LogRhythm community with new dashboards available, new playbook available nearly on a daily basis, new smart response triggered directly by the community and shared by the community. So if you as a customer, for example, you create a new dashboard, you have also the possibility to share this new dashboard or share this new smart response directly on the community network. And so other users of LogRhythm can benefit of your expertise. Okay, so this comes out of the box with our solution. From a deployment point of view, the LogRhythm NextGen can be deployed either as an appliance, either as a software, either as a software as a service in the cloud. This is your choice. We offer multiple capabilities there. And of course, hybrid deployment is also supported for our clients. On top of this, from a licensing point of view, we offer message per second or unlimited, or, and this is very important, perpetual message per second, which means that you have the possibility to purchase this technology as a perpetual license based on the number of messages per second. Okay, and this is pretty much unique in the market. If you think about our competitors, nobody is actually offering perpetual license right now. LogRhythm is one of the only vendors which offers this capability to its customers, and this is usually hugely appreciated by clients. And on top of it, of course, we have an MSP program where you can provide this capability to your customers. Now, a quick word on the architecture. We have different kind of deployments, and everything depends on the size of the deployment. We can go from a client that is going to consume something like 500 or 1,000 messages per second with a unique turnkey solution, which is delivered on a Dell appliance, up to very, very big distributed networks for hundreds of thousands of messages or hundreds of dozens of messages per second. But the logic of the deployment always stays the same. The only difference is the number of CPUs, number of boxes, number of appliances, and the data center on which you deploy the solution, right? So it always starts with the collection layer, and this is where we actually collect the data from the systems of our customers and integrate it inside the LogRhythm solution. So either via collector agents, either via Sysmon, by Netmon, you name it. And all this data, once collected, is forwarded to the processing layer. We have different ways of collecting this data, by the way, either by push, either by pull. But this we can discuss more in details at a later stage. Once the data goes to the processing layer, this data is then forwarded to our indexing layer, which keeps the logs. So there is two kind of logs. There is hot and cold logs, okay? The interest of this indexing layer is that it makes data readily available for the analytics, which means that when you will launch a search, the indexing layer will have an extremely fast response time to provide this data. There also we will see this response time in the demo a little bit later. And all those logs are also, in all this information, this data is also forwarded to the IE engine analytics, which can enrich this data with cloud AI services eventually. And then the results in the events are forwarded to the platform manager, which makes this data and these analytics available either on the console, so the web console, or the internal console of the system, generates the reports, create the alerts, manages the case collaboration, and manages all the smart response. All those elements are purely expandable. So you have a lot of flexibility on your deployment. And if the number of logs you are processing tends to change, tends to raise over the time, you always have the possibility to add some new expansions, some new blocks, either on the indexing, either on the processing layer, either on the platform manager for the analytics. So now that we saw the brief architecture of the solution, let's have a walkthrough of how the technology works. But first, I don't see any questions right now. Please, if you have any questions on what I just presented, do not hesitate to type a question directly inside the webinar panel. I will be happy to answer before I move to the demo. So I'll give you a few seconds maybe, if there is any question. Adrian, maybe you want also to mention this in Romanian, because my Romanian is not up to scratch. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no issue, Matthew. Yeah, I think that everyone speaks English, but still. Bineînțeles, puteți pune întrebările și în zona de QA, în chat. Dar ce recomand eu, dacă tot ar trebui să adaug content nou, e să așteptați până când vedeți și partea de demo. Probabil atunci multe lucruri vor fi mai clare și probabil veți avea mai multe întrebări. So Matthew, what I said basically is that they can of course, they can place the questions now, but probably they will have more questions after your demo, short demo, right? So
okay.
we'll give them more time then, and
brilliant
to bring further questions after.
Yeah, very good. No problem at all. So this is the LogRhythm platform that you see on the screen right now. Adrian, can you see it all right? Just making sure.
All good, yeah.
All good, fantastic. So what you see there is my personal dashboard. You see Matt here. Every single element you see is fully actionable. Okay, so the idea of this dashboard is that it provides the data which is relevant to you. Okay, we do not present all the data that we are collecting because there is always too much data. Okay, and most of the data that we are collecting is not always relevant to our users. So there is a very, very high level of granularity in the data we provide. Okay, we can provide data for specific entities, for specific equipment, you name it. All the data that you wish to display can be completely customized inside the system, okay? And it can be user customized, which means you have the possibility to select what data you want to action at any time during your day, your day job. So what we will do now is that we will look at the day of an analyst, okay? And the first thing I want to show you is the actionable capability of this data. For example, here I have many different tabs, many different formats, okay, of data, and many different widgets that I'm displaying right now. And everything is purely actionable. So for example, if I take top user generating traffic, here I have Brian, I can just click one time on Brian and get some information straight away on Brian, okay? But what I can also do is that I can double click on Brian and launch an analytics specifically for Brian. So here I have this beautiful node link graph, okay, which is outlining all the relationships that Brian has on my network. And everything there, of course, is completely actionable. And I can see the kind of relationship Brian has. Brian is an administrator, okay, with any element on the network, okay. So this is a very important capability of the system. But let's dig a little bit more in on the log side of things. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open a common event and let's call it bad password. Okay, here we are, logging failure, bad password, and I'm going to look at some details. Okay, so let's select this one, for example, and I'm going to look at a log message. Okay, when you are working with logs, you are working with multiple vendors. And as I was saying earlier, every single vendor tends to use a different log format, okay? No vendor speaks exactly the same language, okay? And the problem here is that the analyst cannot know all the different messages, all the different log which are generated by every single vendor, which is working on his deployment. So here, for example, I have bad password. Okay, so the event here is a 4625 from Microsoft. Okay, so this is Microsoft Windows Security Auditing Guide event ID 4625, which is a bad password. But this is not relevant to me as an analyst. I don't want to know that. What is important to me is that this is a bad password. So this is where the MDI fabric capabilities kicks in. And if I look at event in action, I do have actually the translation of this raw log message, okay, which is very difficult to understand, into a human understandable event in action. Okay, so here I can see that it applies to this user. It comes from the primary site. This is the host. This is the host IP. This is the destination, who is impacted. This is the location, where it's coming from, where it is going, okay? And I also have my classification, which means that it's an authentication failure. And the common event of this authentication failure is a bad password. So now let's imagine that I have Windows on one side and I have Fortinet on the other, and I have an antivirus on the other one. Okay, a bad password event has a different code for Fortinet and for Windows, but inside the MDI fabric, a bad password is still a bad password. I can still have an action, and I can just look directly for a bad password. I do not need to know what is the code and what is the specific log for each of those events for every single vendor, because this is not relevant to me as an analyst. What is relevant to me is this is a bad password, and I need to know when there is a bad password event. Okay, so this can be actioned directly inside the search, for example. So if I look at my if I look at my search, I have the possibility of calling directly a bad password. And I can also have this directly inside the dashboard. So here, if I create a new dashboard, and I call this dashboard, let's call it test, okay? I save this test dashboard. Here I have an empty dashboard. And inside this empty dashboard, I'm going to add a widget. Okay, so let's put the top X widget, okay, top actions. And I want to customize what I'm calling on this widget and what type of data I want on this widget. And I want user, okay, user origin. I want to see the most chatty user on the network. So here it's my administrator. And did you see at what speed the system reorganized this widget? Okay. And now I want to add a second widget. Okay. So let's put it here. And this widget, I want to have the most chatty user. Okay. But what I want also is the user which is creating bad passwords. So in action, I can just look for bad. Oops. Sorry, I can look for authentication. Come on. Sorry about that. Okay, I don't have my right setup, so let's forget about this this search right now. But I will always have the possibility to call directly for a classification here. So classification, authentication failure. Okay, and here I'm going to look for user impacted origin with a filter which is authentication failure. Okay, so here I have origin authentication failure, but I also have I also know which user is impacted by authentication failures in relationship with the most chatty users. So I can also change the color because this is a high risk, and I can modify directly here in order to see all my users which are having authentication failures problems. Okay, and this can be reorganized, saved in search inside other dashboards directly. And here, as you can see, I'm using common language. Okay, I'm using authentication failures directly. I do not have to specify any log numbers or any error codes inside the system. I use common language inside the MDI fabric in order to translate those complex logs in human understandable language. So let's go back to my dashboard here. Here we go. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to look at what an analyst is going to do on a day-per-day basis. So let's go into alarm panel. Okay, and let's look at the alarms generated on my system. So this I do not like this panel very much. Usually I prefer to use the card panel, which is always a little bit better for me. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to look at the data generated since 6 hours. Okay, so I'm going to select, and I'm going to classify this by risk descending. Here we are. And here what I can see is the different alarms which were generated during those last 6 hours with high risk. Okay, I'm going to change it to 12 hours actually, because here it looks like I do not have an alarm that I like. So let's see. Yes, here we are. Let's take this one. So here, for example, I have a 97 risk alarm. So what we do is that we classify every single alert with a risk level. And this risk level is actually calculated depending on the host, on the destination, on the severity of the case, on the traffic generated, etc., etc. So we integrate multiple factors in contextual data in the events we are detected in order to determine what is the risk of this alarm, okay? And this alarm is always rated between 1 and 100. So 97 is a pretty significant alarm, okay? And I look at this alarm and I see that this is coming from the analytics engine. It's a concurrent VPN from multiple locations, which is always not a good sign. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to drill down on this alarm. So here I have a little analytics site, and I'm going to launch a search on this alarm, right? Sorry, I have here. Sorry about this. There we are. And so the system created a search on this alarm, but actually did not show what I wanted you to see. So I'm going to redo it. Okay, I'm going to launch a search on this alarm, and please note the speed to which the system has completed the search. And this is because we use this indexing unit in the background, as I was explaining earlier, which pre-indexes all the data inside the system and turns it in hot data, which allows us to have instant results when we do a search on information. So I'm going to click on this alarm and I'm going to go to an analytics panel. And on this analytics panel, on which I have multiple origin points for VPN, I'm going to look at this data. So I see that those are authentication success coming from top user. This is Alice, okay? I'm going to see where is the log source. So the log source, this is coming from a Cisco ISA, but because of the MDI fabric, I don't need to know what is the Cisco ISA authentication success code. The system is not giving me the code of Cisco ISA authentication success. It's just telling me authentication success in user logon, because the MDI fabric transfers this raw log message into human understandable elements. And here I'm going to see the address origin. So those are the IP address where Alice is connecting from. And here I'm going to look at top locations origin. And here I have United States and I also have Iran. This is a big no-no for my organization, okay? So I want to know a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to click on Alice and I'm going to take a little bit more information on Alice. So Alice works on this domain. She works on finance, accountant. She has nothing to do in Iran, okay? And I have some more information on Alice. I can look up on MISNet if I have deployed MISNet, okay? So this is a highly suspicious activity. So the first thing I'm going to do straight away is that I'm going to select my Active Directory account management, okay, and I'm going to reset the password for the ID account, okay, because Alice has nothing to do logging in from Iran. So there I have the possibility to run a reset password for the Active Directory account directly from this panel with my smart response technology, okay. So as I am an analyst, I do not have admin access to the Active Directory, but this is not important because LogRhythm has the admin access. So I can command and control directly via the script towards the Active Directory a reset password, providing I have the authorization and the credentials to do so, of course, but I do not need to have admin access to the dashboard. So I'm not going to do it now because I do not actually have, this is a demo unit, so I do not actually have running Active Directory behind, but I would just need to run and the system would execute this command. So moving on, this is a problem, right? The problem is that Alice is a user for the Cisco system, but I want to know a little bit more about Alice also. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go inside my logs, okay? And I'm going to look at all the logs I have. And I see that all the logs are coming from Cisco ISA, okay? Those are user login, okay? I have the time, I have the IP. And what I want to know also is what's going on. So with this user, so I'm going to go inside identity, and here I have my true identity technology. I mentioned that we look at contextual information, and this is the contextual information. Alice is a user called Alice for the Cisco ASA, but Alice is also an Active Directory user. She is on my domain. So the system is capable of linking this logon on the Cisco ASA Alice to this user Alice Jones on my Active Directory. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to do a drill down on Alice. Okay, so I'm going to click here on the little cog. Let's close this. And I'm going to look at this user Alice, and I'm going to look at the activity of Alice for the last, for the last 3 hours before this event and 3 hours after this event. And I'm going to search now. And the system is going to call back all the data and all the logs regarding this user, Alice, for the last 3 hours. And now I can have access to another dashboard, which is telling me what is happening with Alice, okay? And if I look at all the activity of Alice, I can see that Alice was also triggered by my CrowdStrike system. And that in Iran, I have a malware detection acting on the VPN system, okay? And if I go in my logs here, I see that my CrowdStrike system added a malware. So let's leave this panel here, okay? Let's go back to my main panel because I know now that there is a problem and that this is a serious case, okay? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a case. So if I go back to my alert panel, I can just click here and say, create a case. So multiple VPN authentication success from the same origin, etc., etc. It's a high priority case, so I will create this case, okay? And automatically the system is telling me that I have this current case created. So now that I know that I have this problem, I'm going to start adding some evidence, okay? So here I'm going to check all this evidence, okay? And I'm going to add it to sorry. I did not refresh, actually. I did not follow the right path here. So I'm going to recall my analytic search, okay? And here I'm going to select all those elements and I'm going to say, add all those logs to the case. So this is the Cisco evidence logs, okay? So I'm going to add all those logs to my case. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is that I can go back to my case, okay, and I'm going to add a playbook. So I know that I have a VPN problem, okay, or a malware problem. So let's look at malware and what playbook I have, okay. Malware cleanup playbook seems very good. So I'm going to start working on this playbook, okay. And I'm going to add another playbook, which is a VPN related playbook. Sorry. So investigate VPN malware. Okay, seems like a good plan also. So I'm going to add this playbook. Okay, and what I can do now is that I can also add some collaborations. Okay, some on this on this work. So I can call inside this playbook another user and delegate some tasks to another user if I want. But let's look at this, for example, my DNS check. Yeah, okay. And I want to assign this DNS check to somebody else, okay? Well, let's take care of it myself, okay? So I'm going to check the DNS. Once the DNS is checked, is okay. After I'm going to check the AD login, I'm going to take care of it myself, okay? And then I'm going to test VirusTotal. So what I can do is just go directly inside the inspector here and select one of my smart response, okay? So add this notification to the case. This is done. I can reset my AD password account. This is something I already did, so I will add it to the case. Then I'm going to add this IP address to a specific address group. This is something I can do. And then I'm going to kill this RDP session, add to case. Now, automatically, the RDP session in the background for Alice was closed. If I go back inside my my case evidence, I can categorize this as an incident that was just mitigated, and I can eventually add a note on this. Continuing to progress, I can then look at my my second playbook, okay, and start working on the malware case. And every time I will have my case history, associations added, and all my bit level evidence added directly to this case, okay? Once this case has been mitigated by following the smart response and the playbooks available to me, I can just resolve this case. Send to review for manager, okay? So now, once this case has been resolved, I can close this case automatically, and my manager, just by going on the cases, can have a review of this case where I will have all the metrics of the different cases opened, different cases closed by Matthew Platten, for example, all the playbooks that were applied, and a complete list of all the cases which are currently running, with the possibility also to recall every single action that was done by the users. Okay, so this is in a nutshell, because we will need to leave a little bit of time for the question answers. The day in the life of an analyst using the LogRhythm SIEM system. So this is barely scratching the surface, all right? But what is very important is that during this case study for a malware attack generating multiple VPNs, how many times did you see me use and look at the raw cases? Never, because I don't need to. As an analyst, what I care about is what is actually happening in a clear language, what is happening as actions, bad password, multiple VPN location, authentication failure, authentication access. I do not care directly about the formatting of the logs. I leave this to the machine which is behind, okay? So I can concentrate directly on the actions, on finding the threats which are flagged by the system directly or that I can find via investigation, and solving those cases just by sending smart response and creating cases and following via collaboration eventually the different cases. Okay, I do not have to concentrate on the raw logs. So what do you think of this? How does this seem? Does this way of working with data, this way of responding to threats seem relevant to you? The question we have the more often is actually, how do we differentiate from the other solutions on the market? And my answer on this is very easy. It is via the capability of integration of the technology. So we have a couple of strong points compared to the competition. And one of the biggest strong points is the ease of deployment of the LogRhythm technology. Okay, deploying a fully fledged SIEM solution is usually a challenge. It is usually a painful, long process. Okay, and the deployment of the LogRhythm solution is very different, since we work directly with direct integration with syslog and Open Collector, and we have out of the box integration with over 900 vendors. So the big differentiator of this technology from an integration point of view is the capability of integrating directly with vendors out of the box. Okay, so this usually makes a huge difference for our customers. The second advantage is the MDI fabric. This is something I talk a lot about because this is the strongest advantage of this technology. All the other vendors are trying to do it, but actually we've been doing it since 10 years. So we have a 10 years head start on this. And the capability of integrating new solutions very easily. For example, if you have a SIEM LogRhythm deployed inside your infrastructure and you're using Fortinet, okay, all your technology is deployed around the analytics of Fortinet logs, okay. But let's say that suddenly you add a Palo Alto system. If you are not using this technology, you are going to have to recreate all the rules to trigger and to be leveraged by specific logs, specific log identities coming from Palo Alto, which is totally different from Fortinet, right? With the MDI fabric, you don't need to do it, because a bad password is still a bad password. A breach is still a breach. The events remain the same, because we are capable of recognizing that this is coming from Palo Alto, and all the translation of the logs into common messages and common criteria events is already done for you. So integration on a new vendor inside the LogRhythm next generation SIEM is extremely easy because everything works around common criteria language. So I think that those are the two most common questions we have. Now, from a commercial point of view, another common question we have is, what is your subscription model? And right now, we offer a lot of flexibility around subscription. Most providers are very difficult to work with when it comes to SIEM, because they work only on a number of events per second, and they have regular reviews. Sometimes they even charge the customers for those reviews, and the price of the solution changes drastically from one year to the other because you have different volume of events, and this impacts on the license. LogRhythm has the capability of providing perpetual license, which means that you will buy on a certain number of events per second, or MPS. We use the term NPS, and it will be a perpetual license. Or you have the possibility to buy around a subscription with an unlimited volume, which is also very, very useful and very appreciated by our customers. So this is regarding the volume, but this is something you will discuss much better with my business colleagues.